Nothing wrong, Captain.
Alright, we're gonna get Captain. Some people lined up into the, we're gonna see if anybody jumps in. First, I'm going to do my usual routine in which I share out the link.
There's nothing wrong,
and then, after I share out my link, I will begin.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
I figure as I share out the link, that gives people an opportunity to jump in, and hopefully within that time period,
there's nothing wrong, Captain.
One or two people will be able to hear the juicy parts of this story.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
How did I get into this Discord group? I feel like there's a couple of new Discord groups that I don't remember joining, but oh well. I put the link out, so now, if anybody's watching, I will see it in the YouTube chat.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
And I think I will begin.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Reading from Chapter 7 of Endymion by Dan Simmons.
Nothing wrong, Captain.
Dan Simmons being the author of the Hyperion Cantos, my thus far all-time favorite sci-fi series and sci-fi universe. The reason for this is, well, I stumbled into it by accident a few years ago, maybe 2016, 2017. I was trying to Google how do inertial dampers on Star Trek work. So I Google it, then I find a question on Quora and I read through it, and one of the answers was from some guy who basically goes, oh well, you know, I don't know how they work, but I like the way they solved the problem in Dan Simmons' book. And he describes a ship, well, he describes a universe in which the Roman Catholic Church has hegemony over humanity, or that they are the ones who run the government. They have pretty much the government, the army. It's all ran by the Catholic Church, like 1,000 years in our future. For whatever reason, some chain of events resulted in this. And the ships utilized by the Pax fleet, which is the fleet of the Catholic Church, pretty much will turn you into raspberry jam. No inertial dampers, or not enough inertial dampers to protect you at extreme braking velocities. And so it'll kill you. And then once the ship kills you, using some, as the person in the Quora question put it at least, some alien technology, they could bring those passengers back to life. In the book, they call it resurrection. You know, kind of ironic, you know, and in fact the people who were given the sacrament of resurrection are referred to as born-again Christians, so that's kind of funny, but we're just gonna jump right into it, and assuming I didn't lose my page. Chapter 7, here it is. The torch ships, Balthazar, Melchior, and Gaspar are at a full AU beyond the burning orbital forest, and still decelerating around the unnamed sun when Mother Commander Stone buzzes at Father Captain Destroyer's compartment portal to inform him that the couriers have been resurrected. Actually, only one was resurrected successfully, she amends, floating at the opened iris door. Father Captain Destroyer winces. Has the unsuccessful one been returned to the resurrection crypt, he asks. Not yet, says Stone. Father Sophia is with the survivor. Destroyer nods. Pax? He asks, hoping that this will be the case. Vatican couriers bring more problems than military ones. Mother Commander Stone shakes her head. Both are Vatican. Father Goronsky and Father Van Dries, both legionaries of Christ. Destroyer avoids a sigh only by an effort of will. Destroyer avoids a sigh only by an effort of will. Legionaries of Christ had all but replaced the liberal Jesuits over the centuries. Their power had been growing in the church a century before the big mistake, and it was no secret that the Pope used them as shock troops for difficult missions within the church hierarchy. Which one survived, he asks. Father Van Dries. Stone glances at her comlog. Comlog is like a smartphone.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
She glances.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
He should be revived by now, sir. Very well, says the Sawyer. Adjust the internal field to 1G at 0645. Pipe Captains Hearn and Boulez aboard and give them my compliments. Please escort them to the forward meeting room. I'll be in with Van Dries until we convene.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Aye, aye, says Mother Commander Stone, and she kicks off.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
The revival room outside of the resurrection crèche is more chapel than infirmary. Father Captain Destroyer genuflects towards the altar, and then joins Father Sophia by the gurney, where the courier is sitting up. Sophia is older than most Pax crew, at least 70 standing, and the soft halogen beams reflect from his bald scalp. Destroyer has always found the ship's chaplain short-tempered and not very bright, much like the several of the parish priests he had known as a boy. Captain, acknowledges the chaplain. Destroyer nods and steps closer to the man on the ground. Father Van Dries is young, perhaps in his late 20s standard, and his dark hair is long and curled in the current Vatican fashion, or at least in the fashion that had been coming in when Destroyer had last seen Patrum, the homeworld of the Vatican. And the Vatican, at a time, let's repeat that. Or at least in the fashion that had been coming in when Destroyer had last seen Patrum and the Vatican, a time debt of 3 years had already accrued in the 2 months they had been on this mission. Side note, time debt is similar to time dilation. So of course, anyone who knows a little bit about relativity, look into it. If you ever watched the movie Interstellar, they do a pretty good example of this. The closer to the speed of light that you move, effectively the slower time goes for you. Of course, time moves at the same time for you. But if hypothetically you can go at like 99.9% of the speed of light for like, let's say, 1 year, and then come back home, 1 year would not have passed on Earth. Maybe 2 years, maybe 10 years, it depends on the calculation, but you can actually calculate the time dilation effect, and essentially you can make it so that while you're spending a year on a spaceship, you come back to Earth 10 years later. To your friends and family, you've only aged 1 year, but everyone else that you know who stayed back on Earth is 10 years older. This is much like Planet of the Apes. It is literally the reason why Charlton Heston and his friends ended up on Earth like 1,000 years or hundreds of years after humanity was no longer in charge. Moving along back to the book now. Father Van Dries says, Destroyer, can you hear me? In fact, he looks all fucked up right now, so he's gonna be like, Father Van Dries. Yeah. Wait, okay, that's sorry, lost my train of thought. Destroyer says, Father Van Dries, can you hear me? The young man on the cot nods. This man looks all fucked up. He's like, looks ugly. Language is hard for the first few minutes after resurrection, or so Destroyer has heard. Well, says the chaplain, I'd better be getting the other's body back in the crèche. He frowns at Destroyer, as though the captain had personally brought about the unsuccessful resurrection. It is a waste, Father Captain. It will be weeks, perhaps months, before Father Goronsky can be successfully revived. It will be very painful for him. Destroyer nods. Would you like to see him, Father Captain? Persists the chaplain. The body is, well, barely recognizable as human. The internal organs are quite visible and quite... Go about your duties, Father. Destroyer says
There's nothing wrong,
quietly.
Captain.
Oh, he says it quietly. I said it loudly. Dismissed.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Father Sophia frowns again, as if he is going to reply,
There's
but
nothing wrong,
at that moment, the gravity klaxon
There's nothing wrong,
sounds,
Captain.
and both men have to orient themselves so that their feet
There's
touch
nothing wrong,
the
Captain.
ground as the internal containment field realizes itself.
There's nothing wrong,
Then
Captain.
the gravity slowly climbs to 1G as Father
There's
Van
nothing wrong,
Vries
Captain.
sinks back into the gurney's cushions, and the
There's nothing
captain
wrong, Captain.
shuffles out the door. Even after only 1 day of zero
There's
G,
nothing wrong, Captain.
the return of gravity seems an imposition.
There's nothing wrong,
Father Van
Captain.
Vries, Destroyer says softly. Damn it, I keep talking roughly.
There's nothing wrong,
while he's
Captain.
talking softly. Father Van Vries, Destroyer says softly.
There's nothing wrong,
Can
Captain.
you hear me? The young man nods. His eyes
There's
show
nothing wrong,
pain,
Captain.
show the pain he's in. The man's
There's
skin
nothing wrong,
glistens
Captain.
as if he had just received grafts, or as if he is
There's
a
nothing wrong,
newborn.
Captain.
Ooh. The flesh looks pink
There's
and
nothing
raw
wrong,
to
Captain.
Destroyer, almost burned, and the cruciform on the
There's nothing
courier's
wrong,
chest is livid and twice the normal size.
There's
The
nothing wrong,
cruciform
Captain.
is the resurrection parasite that they wear on their...
There's
that
nothing
is
wrong,
part of their
Captain.
bodies, basically. Do you know where you are?
There's
Whispers
nothing wrong, Captain.
Destroyer. Or who you are, he mentally adds.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Post-resurrection confusion can last for hours or days.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Destroyer knows that the couriers are trained to
There's nothing
overcome
wrong,
that
Captain.
confusion, but how can anyone be trained for death
There's
and
nothing wrong,
revival? An instructor of destroyers at the seminary
nothing wrong, Captain.
had once put it plainly: the cells
There's nothing
remember
wrong,
dying,
Captain.
being dead, even if the mind does not.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
I remember, whispers Father Van Vries, and his voice sounds as
nothing wrong,
raw
Captain.
as his skin looks. You are Captain Destroyer.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Father, Captain Destroyer, yes. Van Vries tries to
nothing wrong,
lever
Captain.
himself up on his elbow and fails.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Sir, he whispers, too weak to lift his head from
There's
the
nothing
pillow.
wrong, Captain.
Destroyer leans closer. The other priest
There's nothing
smells
wrong,
faintly
Captain.
of formaldehyde. Only certain members of the priesthood
There's
are
nothing
trained
wrong,
in the
Captain.
actual mysteries of resurrection, and Destroyer had
There's nothing
chosen
wrong,
not
Captain.
to be one of these. He could officiate at a baptism
There's nothing wrong,
and
Captain.
administer communion or extreme unction. As a starship captain,
There's nothing
he
wrong,
has
Captain.
had more opportunities for the latter than of the former.
nothing wrong, Captain.
But he had never been present at the sacrament of resurrection.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
He has no idea of the process involved beyond
There's
the
nothing wrong,
miracle
Captain.
of the cruciform. In returning
There's
this
nothing wrong,
man's
Captain.
destroyed and compressed body, his decaying neurons and scattered
nothing wrong,
brain
Captain.
mass, to the human form he now sees before him, Van Vries
There's nothing wrong,
begins
Captain.
whispering, and Destroyer has to lean even closer.
There's nothing
The
wrong, Captain.
resurrected priest's lips almost brushing Destroyer's ear.
There's nothing wrong,
Must
Captain.
talk, Van Vries manages with great effort.
There's nothing
Destroyer
wrong,
nods. I've scheduled a briefing in 15 minutes.
There's
My
nothing wrong,
other two
Captain.
ship captains will be there. We'll provide a hover chair for
There's
you,
nothing wrong,
and
Captain.
Van Vries shaking his head. Now, meeting
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
message for you only.
There's nothing wrong,
Destroyer
Captain.
shows no expression. All right. Do
There's
you
nothing
want
wrong,
to wait
Captain.
until you are again? The agonized shake of the head.
There's nothing wrong,
The
Captain.
skin of the priest's face is slick and striated,
There's nothing wrong,
as
Captain.
if the muscle were showing through. Now,
There's nothing
he
wrong,
whispers.
Captain.
Destroyer leans close and waits. You are
There's
too.
nothing wrong, Captain.
Take the Archangel courier ship immediately.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Gasps Van Vries.
There's
It is
nothing wrong,
programmed
Captain.
for the destination. Destroyer remains expressionless,
There's
but
nothing
he
wrong,
is
Captain.
thinking. So it is to be a painful death by acceleration.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Dear Jesus, could you not let this cup pass
There's
from
nothing
me?
wrong, Captain.
What
There's
do
nothing
I
wrong,
tell the
Captain.
others? He asks. Father Van Vries shakes his head.
There's nothing wrong,
Tell
Captain.
them nothing. Put your executive officer in command
There's
of
nothing
the
wrong, Captain.
Balthazar. Transfer task force command
There's nothing
to
wrong,
Mother Captain Boulez. Task force Magi
There's nothing
will
wrong,
have
Captain.
other orders. Will I be informed of these orders?
There's nothing wrong,
asks
Captain.
Destroyer. His jaw hurts with the tension of sounding
There's
calm.
nothing wrong, Captain.
Until 30 seconds ago, the survival and success of
There's nothing wrong,
this
Captain.
ship, this task force, has been
There's
the
nothing wrong,
central
Captain.
reason for his existence. No, Van
There's
Reese
nothing wrong,
says.
Captain.
These orders do not concern you.
There's
The
nothing wrong,
resurrected
Captain.
priest is pale with pain and exhaustion. Destroyer realizes
There's nothing wrong,
that
Captain.
he is taking some satisfaction in that fact
There's
and
nothing wrong,
immediately says a short prayer for forgiveness.
There's nothing
I
wrong,
am to
Captain.
leave immediately, repeats Destroyer. Can I take my
nothing wrong,
few
Captain.
personal possessions? He is thinking of the
There's nothing
small
wrong, Captain.
porcelain sculpture that his sister had given him shortly before her
There's
death
nothing
on
wrong,
Renaissance Vector. That fragile piece locked in
There's
a
nothing wrong, Captain.
stasis cube during high
There's
G
nothing wrong,
maneuvers
Captain.
has been with him for all of his years of space.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
No, says Father Van Reese. Go! Immediately.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Take nothing. This is upon order
There's
of
nothing wrong, Captain.
queries Destroyer. Van Reese frowns through his
There's nothing
grimace
wrong,
of
Captain.
pain. This is upon direct command of His
There's
Holiness
nothing wrong, Captain.
Pope Julius the 14th,
There's
says
nothing wrong, Captain.
the courier. It is Omega priority,
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
superseding all orders of Pax Military Command
There's nothing wrong,
or
Captain.
Space Sea Fleet. Spacecom
There's nothing
Sea
wrong,
Fleet.
Captain.
Omega priority,
There's nothing wrong,
superseding
Captain.
all orders of Pax Military Command or Spacecom
There's
Sea
nothing wrong,
Fleet.
Captain.
Do you understand, Captain Destroyer?
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
I understand, says the Jesuit and bows his head in
There's
compliance.
nothing wrong, Captain.
The Archangel courier ship has no name.
There's nothing
Destroyer
wrong,
had
Captain.
never considered the torch ship's beautiful gourd
There's nothing
shape.
wrong, Captain.
The command and weapons mod dwarfed
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
by huge hawking drives.
There's nothing wrong,
Let me
Captain.
read about that. The Archangel courier ship has no name.
There's nothing
Destroyer
wrong,
had
Captain.
never considered torch ship's beautiful gourd-shaped.
There's
The
nothing wrong,
command
Captain.
and weapons mod dwarfed by the huge hawking drive
There's nothing wrong,
in-system
Captain.
fusion thrust sphere. But the Archangel is actively
nothing wrong,
ugly in
Captain.
comparison. The courier ship is a mass of
nothing
asymmetrical
wrong,
spheres, dodecahedrons, lashons, structural cables,
nothing wrong,
and
Captain.
hawking drive mounts, with the passenger cabin
There's
the
nothing wrong,
merest
Captain.
of afterthoughts in the center of all that junk.
There's nothing
Destroyer
wrong,
had
Captain.
met briefly with Hearn.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Oh, that's our blooper. Destroyer had met
There's nothing
briefly
wrong,
with
Captain.
Hearn, Boulez, and Stone. Explained
There's nothing
only
wrong,
that
Captain.
he had been called away and transferred command
There's
to
nothing
the
wrong,
new
Captain.
and amazed task force and
There's nothing
Balthazar
wrong, Captain.
captains. Then took a one-person transfer pod to
There's
the
nothing wrong,
Archangel.
Captain.
Destroyer tried not to look back at his beloved Balthazar,
There's nothing
but
wrong,
at
Captain.
the last moment before attaching to the courier, he
There's
turned
nothing wrong,
and looked
Captain.
longingly at the torch ship. Sunlight painting its curved
nothing wrong,
flank
Captain.
into a crescent-like sunrise over some lovely world.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Then turned resolutely away. He sees upon entering
There's
that
nothing
the
wrong,
Archangel has only the crudest virtual tactical
There's
command,
nothing wrong, Captain.
manual controls, and bridge. The interior of the command
nothing wrong,
pod is
Captain.
not much larger than Destroyer's crowded cubby on
There's
the
nothing wrong,
Balthazar.
Captain.
Although this space is crowded with cables,
There's nothing wrong,
fiber optic
Captain.
leads, and tech disk keys, and two
There's nothing wrong,
acceleration
Captain.
couches. The only other space is the tiny
There's nothing wrong,
navigation
Captain.
room wardrobe
There's nothing wrong,
cubby.
Captain.
No Destroyer sees at once. The acceleration
nothing wrong,
couches
Captain.
are not standard. These are unpadded steel trays in
There's
human
nothing
form.
wrong, Captain.
More like autopsy slabs than couches.
There's
the
nothing
trays
wrong,
have a
Captain.
lip to keep fluid from sloshing under high G.
There's nothing
He
wrong,
is
Captain.
sure, and he realizes that the only compensating
wrong,
containment
Captain.
field in the ship would be around these
There's nothing
couches
wrong, Captain.
to keep the pulverized flesh, bone, and brain matter
There's
from
nothing wrong,
floating
Captain.
away in the zero-G intervals after final
There's nothing wrong,
deceleration.
Captain.
Destroyer can see the nozzles where water
There's
or
nothing
some
wrong, Captain.
cleansing solution would have been injected at high speed
There's
to
nothing wrong,
clean
Captain.
the steel. It had not been totally successful.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Acceleration in 2 minutes, says the metallic voice.
There's
Strap
nothing wrong,
in
Captain.
now. No niceties, thinks the Sawyer.
There's
Not
nothing
even
wrong,
a
Captain.
please. Ship? He says. He knows that
There's
no
nothing
true
wrong,
AIs
Captain.
are allowed on PAX ships. Indeed, no AIs are allowed
There's nothing
anywhere
wrong,
in the
Captain.
PAX-controlled human space. But he thinks that
There's
the
nothing wrong,
Vatican
Captain.
might have made an exception on one of its Archangel-class
There's nothing wrong,
courier
Captain.
ships. Archangel.
There's nothing wrong,
1
Captain.
minute 30 seconds until initial acceleration, comes
There's
the
nothing wrong,
metallic
Captain.
voice, and the Sawyer realizes that he is talking
nothing
to
wrong,
an
Captain.
idiot machine. He hurries to strap himself in.
There's nothing
The
wrong,
bands
Captain.
are broad, thick, and almost surely for show.
There's nothing wrong,
The
Captain.
containment field will hold him, or his remains in place.
There's nothing
30
wrong, Captain.
seconds, says the idiot voice. Be advised that C+
There's nothing wrong,
translation
Captain.
will be lethal. Thanks, says Father Captain
nothing wrong,
Federico,
Captain.
the Sawyer. His heart is pounding so fiercely
There's
that
nothing
he
wrong,
can
Captain.
hear it in his ears. Lights flicker in the various
There's nothing wrong,
instruments.
Captain.
Nothing here is meant for human override, so the Sawyer ignores
nothing
them.
wrong, Captain.
15 seconds, says the ship. You might wish to pray
There's nothing
now.
wrong, Captain.
Fuck you, says the Sawyer. He has been praying since
There's
he
nothing wrong,
left the
Captain.
courier's recovery room. Now he adds a final prayer for
There's nothing
forgiveness
wrong, Captain.
for the obscenity. 5 seconds, comes the
There's nothing
voice.
wrong, Captain.
There will be no further communications. May God bless you
There's nothing
and
wrong,
speed
Captain.
your resurrection in Christ's name. Amen,
There's
says
nothing wrong,
Father
Captain.
Captain Sawyer. He closes his eyes as acceleration
wrong, Captain.
commences. And then in
There's
my
nothing
head, I
wrong,
like to
Captain.
imagine like a hyperdrive sound or something, like a,
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
you know, like something like build up, you know, and then the thing goes.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
Because essentially, right when that ship accelerates,
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
when that man is pushed to the back of that steel tray
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
and is crushed to death.
There's
And
nothing
not
wrong,
long
Captain.
after that, he is pulverized. And then, if he doesn't completely turn
There's
the
nothing
raspberry
wrong,
jam, by the time he comes out the other side, that ship
There's
will
nothing
be
wrong,
breaking
Captain.
so hard that it will be
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
performing or engaged in raspberry jam delta V,
There's nothing wrong,
meaning
Captain.
that it will be decelerating so rapidly
There's
that
nothing wrong, Captain.
you'll have a tray full of raspberry
There's nothing
jam
wrong, Captain.
and remnants of organs, and maybe
There's
a
nothing wrong,
protein
Captain.
paste. But certainly not a intact
There's nothing
body.
wrong, Captain.
But thanks to the cruciform, which Father
There's
Captain
nothing wrong,
Federico
Captain.
de Sawyer wears on his chest,
There's
he
nothing wrong,
will be
Captain.
resurrected from the dead through the sacrament of
There's nothing
resurrection,
wrong, Captain.
as performed by a resurrection priest at his
There's nothing wrong,
destination.
Captain.
And that's basically
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
somewhere early in the book. It's actually chapter 7, but
There's nothing
honestly,
wrong,
when I
Captain.
think about this book, I think about this as when the book really starts to find its
There's
feet.
nothing
I'm
wrong,
just
Captain.
like, oh my god, it happened! You know, because
There's
I
nothing
read the
wrong,
first
Captain.
2 books in this series, and none of this should have happened. There was a hint as to
nothing
what
wrong,
the
Captain.
cruciform was doing, but
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
I only read this part by accident
There's nothing wrong,
in reading
Captain.
reading that Quora question, but I did not know what I was
There's
really
nothing
in
wrong,
store
Captain.
for, and it was finally coming to fruition. So,
There's nothing
yeah, I
wrong,
mean,
Captain.
it met or exceeded expectations. Great book.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
This is Endymion by Dan Simmons, but if you really want to read the
There's
complete
nothing wrong,
series,
Captain.
the series starts with a book called Hyperion,
There's nothing wrong,
and
Captain.
that is, of course, by Dan Simmons. Hyperion is a fantastic book
There's nothing
because it
wrong,
is actually
Captain.
comprised of a number of short stories.
There's
I mean, they're
nothing
not
wrong,
very
Captain.
short stories, but they vary in length. If you're listening to
There's
the
nothing wrong,
audiobook, they
Captain.
could range from like 2 to 3 hours each,
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
maybe a little longer. I forget precisely how long, but
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
it's like a diverse set of stories. You got like 5 or 6 separate stories
There's
right
nothing
there.
wrong, Captain.
In the second book, it's a little bit different of a format, but
nothing
you're
wrong,
still
Captain.
following the same characters. and you're getting a little bit more
There's
of a
nothing
deeper
wrong,
glimpse
Captain.
into the society of the people living in the hegemony of man.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
And then, books 3 and 4, well, books 3,
There's
major
nothing
time
wrong,
jump.
Captain.
I don't want to explain in too much detail how we end up in a
There's nothing
situation
wrong,
where the
Captain.
Catholic Church is running everything, but that's
There's
what
nothing wrong,
happens.
Captain.
The Catholic Church gets a monopoly on the
There's nothing wrong,
ability
Captain.
to resurrect people from the dead. And
There's nothing
this,
wrong,
of
Captain.
course, allows them to go around to different planets saying, hey,
There's nothing
if
wrong,
you become
Captain.
a born-again Christian, you can live forever. And, of course,
There's
this is
nothing
like a
wrong,
pretty good
Captain.
recruitment strategy, as you might imagine. And so
There's
with
nothing
that,
wrong, Captain.
I highly recommend this series, and I hope you enjoyed this reading.
There's nothing wrong, Captain.
I may clip the second half of it out, because honestly, I just love the part
There's
where the guy
nothing
gets
wrong,
on the
Captain.
ship. And how the ship is talking in a robotic voice,
There's
and he's
nothing
saying
wrong,
F you
Captain.
to the ship, then he says a prayer for forgiveness. I mean, it's just hilarious.
There's nothing wrong,
But
Captain.
yeah, with that, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.
There's
and
nothing wrong,
transmission.
Captain.